Thank you very much for joining us on the Voice of Job Seekers. This is Mark, and welcome to the 5th season of the Voice of Job Seekers. Yes, we've been doing this 5 years. What I had originally planned in doing a celebration wasn't going to turn out well. And since it wasn't going to turn out well and things were still kind of iffy around this time, I went ahead and we're going to do the 200th episode. I believe it's going to be in early March. So I've been doing this 5 years, and I'm grateful that you all are back with me. With me on my phone is, or should I say Skype, for the 4th time visiting in 5 years is Mark Babbitt. Mark Babbitt is the CEO of U-Turn, as well as Switch and Shift, which has a new branded podcast, which is Work That Matters. I want to welcome him back to the show. How are you, Mark?
I'm fine, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing fantabulous. Thank you very much.
Good. Congratulations, 5 years. I'm so impressed.
Yes, I know. I kept it up for that long. And is you know, podcasts, they come and they go. And there's a small percentage of us that get to 100, much less to 200. So I'm happy to be amongst the smaller amount of folks that make it this far. So, but it's good to have you, since you were like one of the first 15 guests that I had on the show. And plus, we've been friends for so long now. I watch you, and I try to time my invitations to where if you're not touring and speaking, that you're available in the mountains where you are.
Well, it's always my pleasure to be here, and even if I am touring and speaking, you reach out and I'll be there. I really enjoy our conversations, both for the podcast and otherwise.
Yes, absolutely. Working at large to help job seekers and to help people working. Now that we're in the economy, when I first started back in 2013 with the podcast, not particularly with the blog. But even with the blog, though, way back when, it was 9%, 10% unemployment. Now it's a shade below 4%. That's come a long way. I like to think that we contributed to helping people get back to work in that sense.
Well, I sure would like to think so.
Yeah.
So the economy is going well right now. Unfortunately, Mark, that as you've seen, I know, it kind of puts people at ease, maybe a little bit too at ease. There are a lot of jobs out there, but that doesn't mean that the competition isn't just crazy right now, and that's why these conversations are so important.
Yeah, people are comfortable to switch jobs. It's not the people who are unemployed. When a lot of people are unemployed, people are going to stay where they are until somebody else has a say in it. Now people are ready to, shift and change and be a little bolder in their ask as far as another job and other opportunities. So still, from what I hear, they're the hundreds of job applicants for one position, except they're all serious. They're all a little bit more grounded than before. So things have definitely changed, and that's why I thought it was pretty fair to start talking about how job seekers should present themselves these days, and how things need to really transfer or translate to the job interview. And you're looking into, and you're studying, you're reading, you're writing a lot about workplace culture these days, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's good economy or bad. It's we're learning now after years of just taking the first job that came along, just how important it is to actually feel fulfilled from our work and to feel like our work really matters.
Yes.
That we're not just trading our hours for dollars. That we're impacting the mission of the company or the successful accomplishment of that mission. And so the conversation around workplace culture has become more and more important And I'll tell you, it kind of reared its ugly head in a strange way, Mark, when the economy finally started turning better just a couple short years ago. People started realizing how unhappy they were at their current job.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started thinking back and going, you know what, I really never have been happy here. I mean, I'm getting compensated well, but this isn't the kind of culture that I want to be in. Well, now that people are willfully, intentionally changing jobs, that's one of the critical factors in changing jobs. Is the next culture going to be better suited to my talents, to better aligned to my personal purpose? So culture's become a really hot topic.
Yeah, and I think it's important for job seekers to, and you and I have talked about this for years now, how in depth the research needs to be by the job seeker, not just to find out what department you're part of and what position you're applying to, but to really understand what the workplace culture is like, so that that employer can see you in the seat thriving in their culture.
Well, that's just it. And unfortunately, for a long time, we had this buzzword. We want to hire people that are a good fit in our
Yes.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that fit isn't the important thing at all. We don't want somebody that's just going to kind of blend in and not rock the boat and not provide us with some unique perspectives. We certainly don't want people who aren't afraid to speak their mind. We want people that are going to come and shake things up a little bit and say, you know what, I see how we're doing that. I appreciate how we're doing that, but let me throw an idea out there at you and see if it sticks a little bit. And that's what employers are looking for now. They're looking for people that yes, we certainly want you to feel part of our culture. We want you to appreciate our culture, but we also want to, like I said, shake things up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and improve our culture. It's so funny, Mark, when I talk to employers all over the country and all over the world, and they all say, well, we're always looking for a good fit for our culture. So, well, but you just admitted your culture kind of sucks. So,
Right.
so why are we looking for a perfect fit for the current culture? Shouldn't you be hiring for your ideal culture 3-5 years from now? Shouldn't that what you be hiring for? And that conversation is turning a lot of heads, and it's certainly making people think that maybe our culture right now isn't perfect, and maybe we shouldn't be hiring for what we were. Maybe we should be hiring for what we want to be.
Yeah, it's more or less we want the baby to be cute, but we're disappointed that the baby doesn't laugh and giggle like all the other babies do. So we think we think there's something wrong with the baby, when there's nothing wrong with the baby. It's that the baby needs the stimulation and needs the freedom to be who the baby really is, and that you will need to accept the baby for who he really is. But you got to find out who the baby really is.
Well, and here's what's really funny about that, Mark. It's so easy to discover that portion. It's so all you got to do is ask very simple questions around your culture, and then be ready to listen to the answers. If you ask people, you just sit down with somebody or run into them in the hallway and say, so how's it going? What are we doing really well? What are we not doing well? And then actively listen to the answer. You'll quickly find out what your company's made of and what that employee's made of.
Well, there's an old saying that I think at least more than a half a century old: as the leaders lead, the people follow. And I think it's as simple as that.
Well, that's it, Mark. But unfortunately, and you and I have talked about this before, leadership has really taken a hit over the last 10 years. We're still many of us, we're still managers focused on compliance and conformity. We haven't made that leap into leaders yet.
Mm-hmm.
That inspire people to do good work and enable people to bring their whole selves to work, not just the industrial age, I'm going to go put in my 8 hours, but I mean the whole the creative side, the innovative
Mm-hmm.
side. Right, that's what leaders do. And then there's a whole nother step above that that's almost aspirational at this point for most managers who've made that leap into leaders, and that's into mentorship. I mean, when you can inspire good people, and you're an active listener, and you're a relentless giver, and you take an interest in their personal and professional growth, that creates the kind of not just leadership loyalty, but the kind of company culture we would all want for our companies. We would all wish for, and yet we haven't made that leap. So your point is well taken. That, well, if you're a good leader, people will follow, and especially if you make a leap into mentorship, people will follow you, not just this company, but people will follow you wherever you go.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think of times the leaders that were good managers and mentors. For me, I want to follow them. Where are you going, and can I come? And since I can't come, let me be sure I grab the last bit of time I possibly can get with you. That's part of the. That's the response to it. But in essence, how does a job seeker find that golden goose who is a leader instead of a manager?
Well, I think, Mark, it really comes down to going past the cliche advice about doing your homework,
mm-hmm.
and actually sitting down and having a conversation. We recently polled our U-turn community, and only 40% of the people who took their first entry-level job right out of school even met their manager before they signed on the dotted line and agreed to work for that company, and that is just insane.
That is insane.
And if you don't know, and the data 3 years ago, the data was quite clear. 70% of those who willfully left a job left as a direct result of their relationship with their supervisor, and now 3 years later, it's 78% leave because they just don't feel that their boss is providing a fulfilling work environment. Well, with the data being that clear, why wouldn't we take the time to firstly understand what our leadership style is of our direct supervisor, and second, see how well that fits within the existing company culture. And if you know the answer to those two things, you are well on your way to understanding exactly what that company culture is like. And I have to say, Mark, it goes well beyond reading the About Us page and the careers page and what the company says about themselves. We got to do a little digging. We got to find out, what's this company really like when they're interfacing with their customer? What are they like on social media? What do they stand for? Besides making money, what's their purpose? And then, of course, we have to ask ourselves, does that purpose align with ours? Is there alignment of values? And if the answer is no, it's probably not a great company culture for you.
Yeah, and with the having conversations, which is really the true research of having not with just one employee that but several employees, and being able to even like I said, the easy stuff is, I think we were in a place before just to get people to do some research that was critical. Now that we're much deeper in, the competition's much more is thicker. The research needs to be much more valuable because you want to gain intelligence. You just don't want to gain a feel. You want to be able to understand, so that if you would have an intelligent response to a question that's asked about culture, because that's what I guess people who are interviewing are asking something that they don't know the answer to themselves yet.
Well, boy, you just said something major, Mark. It bothers me a little bit when people do read the About Us page and the careers page, and they know exactly what the company says about themselves, but they don't verify those facts at all. They don't say, is that how the culture really is? What's it really like to work here? And that's one of my favorite job interview questions, by the way, is you're sitting across from that HR person and eventually the hiring manager and your boss, you got to ask the question, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What's it really like to work here? What keeps you coming back? You've been here 5 years. I checked you out on LinkedIn. 5 years seems like a long time. What do you like about working at this company? And that's when you find out the real answers, not based on what it says on a web page.
Yeah, and there's so much for being polite. It's time to start being direct and being honest and start having honest conversations, and not to people still come to be interrogated instead of trying to build a business conversation. And
that's it exactly.
Yeah, and
there is a time in every job interview, Mark, this, for respectful radical candor, and that is, when you're sitting there and you say, well, so you Mr. Job Interviewer, you just recited basically what the company culture, what it says, your about us page says about company culture. But it appears as though the company, and I'd love to help you solve this problem, seems to be struggling in this area right here. And I'd love to talk to you about that. And if they're afraid to talk to you about that, or if they get defensive, or if they don't welcome that respectful radical candor that you bring to the job interview in a business conversation, it is probably not the right fit for you. Because if you were brave enough to bring it up, they should be brave enough to answer.
And that's another part of it too. Is people? There are people who do better when they are also ready to feel like they can walk away from a potential employer because of those reasons. A lot of people don't get to that point. Unfortunately, they're barely hanging on by the threads as far as their understanding, because they're trying to get in under the old guys instead of looking at now. The job search requires a lot more savvy than just knowing enough to answer a few questions.
Well, again, you said something really important. We everybody has their own sense of urgency, right? And when you and I first got into this business, Mark, everybody had an acute sense of urgency, because as you started the show by saying, unemployment back then was 8, 9, almost 10% at times, and we had bills to pay, and we had families to support, and education to pay for, and our sense of urgency for many of us was much different then. And I'm not saying hold out for that perfect company culture and then don't pay your bills in the meantime. The higher your sense of urgency, the more we can compromise, at least short term, on our values and on our sense of purpose. But don't ever stop looking for the right thing. Don't ever, one job interview and one job offer doesn't mean you get to stop being a job seeker now. It just doesn't work like that.
No.
And you and I talked about this off air. We're always looking to improve our personal brand. We're always looking to create new social proof. We're always looking to generate new testimonials from people that can talk very directly about the quality of our work and our passion and our work ethic, and that never stops. Even if you have to, short term, take something to help pay the bills. We've all been there. I know you and I have both been there. But don't stop looking. Don't ever assume that you're never going to find the perfect gig for you, because it's out there.
Yeah, or at least one with a thriving environment. There may be argument whether there is a perfect job, but nevertheless, the idea that I heard on your podcast where you guys talked about, you throwing on the term, or maybe I gleaned the term of workplace intelligence. What do you think job candidates should know about it, and are there things that they can do to glean more about a prospective workplace and be able to glean what they need to glean as intelligence?
Well, the workplace intelligence is a phrase that my business partner and I came up with over on the leadership side of our business at workiq.com, and quite simply, Mark, it's It's the 7 areas that studies have shown for a good couple decades now, and some, like the Gallup studies, have shown for going on 4 and 5 decades. It's the 7 most critical elements to a great workplace, and it starts, of course, like we've already talked about, with culture and climate. How do we go about our work, and what does it feel like to work here? It then goes to leadership. It covers things like purpose-driven performance and optimism in the workplace. Nobody wants to go to a place where you go, on that walk from the car to the front door, or from the train to the front door. Nobody wants to go, God, I don't want to be here today. If you're saying that over and over and over again, something's wrong. That is not an optimistic workplace.
Not at all.
But it also goes to more personal things, like how well does this company build community? Do I feel like I belong here? If I left here right now, would I regret that at some point? Right? Would I leave behind friends and people I respect? So that sense of community is really important. And so, Mark, is social intelligence, because social media, digital media has become such a big part of everything we do now,
right?
That nobody wants to work for a company that has a terrible reputation online, and doesn't handle their customers well, and is only driven by next quarter's quarterly report, to the shareholders, and not driven by a purpose other than that. And that shows up online, and nobody wants to work for a company that isn't authentic and wants to do something other than make money. And so there's these 7 factors, and they all combine to form what we call workplace intelligence. And you asked what a candidate can do to learn that. The discovery starts as soon as you see an ad, or as soon as you place a company on your target list. You got to start looking at those things. You got to look at their culture, their leadership, are they driven by purpose? And is performance within that purpose rewarded? Are employees engaged? Do they have a great reputation online, or at least an authentic version online? Everybody screws up, fine. Do they own it, or do they not? Right. The big factor is what we already talked about, that sense of community. Like, I really want to belong here. And if you talk to former employees, current employees, the hiring manager, and you ask questions around those 7 areas, you're going to get a very strong look at a company's workplace intelligence.
Yeah. I think job seekers need to learn to leverage whatever information that they could possibly glean out of it, or through having conversations and through online, through communicating with them, or with the company or other companies, even the company's competition. Leverage whatever they possibly can to find out as much information as they can. Not so much, will you hire me? That shouldn't be the forefront question at all. Is that why has to be as important as the what?
Well, and if you don't mind, Mark, I'll add the how to that.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
You look at I don't know, lots of examples. Look at Facebook, right? In the last few months, they've always been very clear on their why, right?
Right.
And they've been very consistent with that. They've been very consistent with their what, right? They have a beautiful platform that a bazillion people now use almost every day.
Yep.
But they lost sight of their how, and they were willing to drive traffic up by propagating fake news and manipulating even elections, and giving a voice to those that couldn't verify facts, and even Mark Zuckerberg had to get up there and go, you know what, we're going back to our why, and the how is going to start to matter again, and that's important to us. Now, here's what's funny is they make this proclamation that the why is now more important than the how again, and their company loses $120 billion in evaluations overnight, right? So,
right.
So even even companies make mistakes when it comes to their workplace intelligence. And Facebook, for all of their glory, for all the amazing things they've done, they're no different, right?
Right.
But from a job seeker point of view, now you can say, you know what? I would love to work for Facebook now because Zuckerberg himself is taking an active role, and their purpose, their why, is now as important or more important as their what and how. And that's the kind of company I want to work for.
Sure.
And so it actually becomes a filter for us job seekers to say, you know what, Facebook made some mistakes, just like, Volkswagen did and Bank of America did and Wells Fargo did. But I see them trying to make it better, and that's what I want to be a part of. And now are we really want to be a change artist, a turnaround specialist? If they're not ready to change, probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the one thing that I don't see enough of out of job seekers. They're being that they're still, a lot of them don't believe that they were ever empowered to choose a job or choose an employer or not, is that if an employer is not delivering on some of my values, some of my core values, and the things that I believe that I would want to be a part of, then I need to walk away. And that's where a lot of there are people who can do it, and there's too many more who refuse to do it because they're still waiting to be chosen, which says a lot about someone's confidence in their own personal brand and the way they present themselves and a whole myriad of things.
Right. Well, and this all brings us back to this topic of workplace intelligence, Mark, because let's just say you believe the About Us page, you appreciate the political party of the mayor, so you think it might be a good place to work because you're aligned there. But then you start looking at the other factors. You start looking at their social intelligence and how they're handling a crisis online. You start looking at that sense of belonging or that sense of community, and you find out it's not there. And you find out that they're not, their performance is not based on purpose. It's based on some wild factor about, well, we delivered water. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it wasn't good water. Right. Well, that clearly indicates they're not driven by quality or performance. So even if you could get over the leadership issues and the culture issues, can you really get over, in this case, the purpose issue and the values and the sense of community and their presence online? Well, you fail 4 out of 7 areas. You fail, even if I give you credit for these other 3. 4 areas that are really important to me, you fail miserably in now, and I cannot go to work for you. And that's the kind of sense of urgency we're trying to help job seekers and employers create now. Is do we have an aligned sense of workplace and intelligence? And if not, let's not make a hiring mistake, and let's certainly not make a career mistake.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the last things to I think you pretty much said everything. Is that for a candidate to really think about, you're gleaning from what you can contribute to the specific culture, not to just any culture. So you're not just preparing one time in general for an interview. You're preparing to talk with that particular company with these particular workplace questions and culture questions to fit that particular employer, and even when you do talk to the manager and the person you're going to see every day, or the team that you're going to see every day, that you're asking very pointed, direct questions. And even if it's something that they might not be willing to answer, to go ahead and ask that question anyway, because a lot of times what you don't say says volumes as well as what you do say.
That's right. Mark, when you don't get an answer to a very direct question, that tells you more than any answer might.
Oh, yeah. So, that says everything you want to know.
Right. I mean, even I said before, one of my favorite questions is, for the person across the interview table is, what's it really like to work here? Well, if they never answer that question, doesn't that tell you a lot about what it's really like to work there? If you get negative body language, or you get a big sigh, or they have to stop and think about it for 30 seconds or so, that they can just stop talking, because that's told you everything you need to understand.
Yes. And what's interesting is, and I bring this up because I just talked to a former client on Saturday who recently got a position a few months ago. She said that one of the candidates, or one of the jobs that she was in the running and she was the lead candidate for, she started asking questions. She only asked 2 questions, and she got feedback from someone that she knew within the company, said, boy, this person asked a lot of questions. Now he only asked 2 questions. And of course, she didn't take the job because the employer kind of disappeared for 6 weeks after that, and only to come back and says, oh, we're going to meet with the board, and we'd like you to meet with the board. 6 weeks later? Really? I mean, that told her a lot. But those are the kind of things that go on these days because people don't want to answer a direct question.
Well, Mark, but here's the problem with all of that, and you're absolutely correct. But for too many job seekers, if the answer to the question that you posed earlier, are you willing to hire me? If that answer is still yes, then we will ignore way too many other factors that should be red flags for us.
Sure.
That should say, no, this is not a company I want to work for. I'll continue the conversation because it's the right thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
but this is not in my top 3 anymore, and I need to emotionally move on.
Yeah.
And we're not doing that because we still think, oh, I still need a job. They might hire me. I'm going to overlook what it says on Twitter about them. I'm going to overlook what it says on Glassdoor. I'm going to overlook the huge argument that they started on Facebook, the polarizing, pro-Trump or pro-Hillary conversations. I'm going to overlook all of those because, boy, I need a job.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it doesn't, in the long term, it hurts you more than helps you. But thank you so much for coming back on the show, Mark. Great conversation. Tell us a little bit more about Work That Matters, your new branded podcast.
Well, Work That Matters talks a lot about what we're talking about here today, Mark. And it,
Mm-hmm.
along with my partner Sean Murphy, we're bringing on some amazing guests and CEOs and authors and influencers, and we're talking very specifically about how do we make sure that our work does matter, and how do we do our part, right? For instance, we can complain all we want about the company culture where we work right now, but
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing to positively contribute to that culture?
Mm-hmm.
How are we making a difference? And so it isn't just a research podcast. It isn't just a bunch of best-selling authors. It's people in the trenches that are working every day to make where they work better, either as an individual contributor or as a leader. And so some of the conversations are quite telling. And every one of them, Mark, I will tell you this: the main thing I get out of them is it shows just how far and how quickly we're finally moving from the industrial age mindset, where we are just trading dollars for hours,
Mm-hmm.
to what, this really, my work does matter to me, and I want it to matter to my employer, and it's important to want to get out of bed every morning and do something amazing. And before we just showed up at 8:15 every morning and we left at 4:30 every afternoon, and we did our job, and that was that. And the world's not like that anymore. And
Right.
the more conversations we have to help us, discover what that transition's really like, it's exciting.
Yes. And that's been something that you've been working on a while beyond the podcast. You've been talking about that for the last 3 or 4 years. Through the former name was Shift and Switch, I believe it was.
Switch and Shift, yes, yeah.
And then of course, Work IQ has evolved from that, from being Switch and Shift to now workiq.com is where you can find the new blog and podcasts for the podcast. And then, of course, you still are running U-Turn as one of the best place for interns online in the world.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind. U-Turn is still very much a passion project for us. We've been around 9 years now, and this September will be 9 years.
Mm.
And if we can make a job or intern seekers job a little bit easier, life a little bit easier, that's what we're there for. So still doing very good work, and I'm blessed to have a very good crew over there.
Yes, yes. In the meantime, people can still find. What's the best place to find you?
Well, you can still reach me at mark@uturn.com, and also mark.babbitt@workiq.com. And you know me, Mark, I'm all over Twitter and social media. So
Yes.
so Google me, and I'm sure you'll find me. And I still answer all my phones. I still answer my own tweets. Still write my own blog. So I'd love to have a conversation.
Yes, and I think I've known you now for about 6-7 years, and you've always done your own stuff. So no assistant helping you in answering those. It's actually you. So a lot of us are very grateful for that. If in the meantime, for the rest of you, thank you very much for joining us here. Join us back in a couple of weeks. We'll have another great episode for you. Thanks a lot, and have a great week.